Hello and welcome everyone to today's Friday Live at 5. I'm Peter McLaughlin. Blue Sky Hypnosis is the name of my channel. And welcome to all of you. Welcome to the longtime people who have been here week after week or maybe multiple Fridays. I'm really grateful for you guys. You've done a lot to help make this Friday so much fun to do, and I think successful for the people who are watching it. And thank you to those new people who are out there. You know, the more new people that come, the better as far as I'm concerned, and I really appreciate that. Now, as I always say at the beginning of these live broadcasts, please, please, please feel free. If you have any questions that you're bringing with you or any questions that occur to you, just put them in the chat bar in the comments section, and I'll go through there and answer the ones that I can, or at least the ones I can get to. If you, again, questions, comments, love those. It makes this way, way, way more interesting. What I love so much about doing these Friday Lives is that it feels way more interactive and less static. It's less me just talking and more of us having a communication, because when you ask certain questions, it definitely takes it in sometimes in a different direction than I was thinking it was going to go in. Sometimes it challenges me, and it certainly makes things way more interesting. Also, if you have ideas for future Live at 5s, please feel free to share those with me either during this broadcast or sending me an email later, and remember to subscribe to my channel. So without further ado, today we're talking about the soul of money. Now, this is based upon a live class that I taught a few years ago, where we're going to dive deep into, call it the psycho-spiritual, emotional aspects of money. And what are some of the things that can block us from leading the life that we want to lead? And what would we need to do to kind of push those blocks out of the way and move in a new direction so we can have the experiences that we want? Now, in order to start this whole thing, I wanted to start with beliefs. Beliefs about what money is. And these are things that we probably all got when we were growing up. Certainly when I was learning the art and the science of hypnosis and hypnotherapy 14 years ago, the one day that really was kind of like insane was a whole day that they devoted to talking about money. Now, this is like a 2.5 month long course that I was taking. Super intense, Monday through Friday, 10 hours a day, working with each other on the weekends. And the one day that people really lost their was the day that they were talking about money. And when you start to really think about this, you start to realize, wait a second, okay, so a lot of times we get our value, right, because that's a monetary financial term. Our personal value sometimes gets wrapped up in how much money we have, how much money we're making, how much money we make relative to someone else. You know, if we get the promotion, if we don't. I mean, sometimes for people, they don't necessarily even need the money, but the promotion and the money that goes along with it gives them feelings of self-worth and self-value, and that, for some people, is even more important. So I put up this, oh, doggone it. Oh, no, we're still live. Okay, I thought we lost the feed. I put up this photograph of the camel and the eye of the needle. So in the Bible, it says that a wealthy man has the same chance, something like this, the same chance of getting into heaven as a camel does of getting through the eye of a needle. So other common phrases would be, money is the root of all evil. Now, for people that take this on, that take this belief on, and have a real moral sense, they want to be, you know, like most people, a really good person, a valuable member of society. Those kinds of beliefs could create some real issues, especially in their subconscious mind, where all of your behavior ultimately originates. So, as I've said before in many of these broadcasts, if you think of a computer, there's largely two main components of a computer. There's the hardware aspect of, say, your laptop, the keyboard and the screen and aspects like that. You know, you can hear the fan underneath. There are places to plug, ports to plug different connections in. Those are the parts that we interface with, the user interface. But the more important part of the computer, arguably, is the software. The software represents the brain, literally the programming that allows that computer to operate the way it does. Same with you and me. We have a physical body, that's the hardware, like the laptop, and then I'm pointing to my head, but nobody knows if that's where your subconscious mind resides, because sometimes we say, what does your gut tell you, for example? Or I have a gut feeling about something, or I have an intuition about something, or my heart tells me something. So the second part of us would be our belief system, our conscious, and most importantly, our subconscious mind. This is where all of these beliefs would reside. Now, the definition of a belief is an emotionalized idea. So you take an idea, doesn't have to be true or false, and you take an emotion and you combine those together, and now you have a belief. And when you trip over a belief, like someone else's belief, or somebody trips over your belief, it brings the emotions up and out. Think of political talk radio. It exists, it seems, to just have two sides, left and right usually, tripping over each other's belief systems, emotionalized ideas. One person doesn't have to be right, the other person doesn't have to be wrong. It doesn't matter. When they trip over, when a belief is tripped over, you know, because the emotions come up. And that's what happened 14 years ago in that class on that day when we talked about money. There were literally people crying, shouting, running out of the room. And in 2.5 months, that never happened on any other day. And it was such a powerful demonstration, and maybe inadvertent, of the control and the power that money has in our lives. So let's delve deeper into this one. And before we leave the belief part of it, let's talk about certain things. Like if I were to say, rich people are, and you were to fill in the next part of that, that might help to reveal your deeper thoughts about money. Or if I said, poor people are, and you filled in the second part of that statement, that also might help you to understand what some of those deeper beliefs about money really are. And the big daddy of them all is when you ask people, well, if you don't have money or you don't have as much money as you want, what would money give you? This is a question that I would ask clients when I'm working with them when they want something. So earlier today, I was working with a woman who wants to lose weight. And it's now a question that I ask everybody when they say what they want or what they don't want. And I say, what will that give you? What will that allow you to do that you cannot do now? Most importantly, what will it allow you to feel that you don't feel now? So one of the ways of thinking about this is you can do this thought experiment, and you can realize that although it would be very difficult, you could literally be living in a prison and you could feel free. You could be living in very modest circumstances, like in a very small apartment or in a trailer park or in a tiny home, and you could feel rich. Conversely, you could be living in a mansion, or a person could be living in a mansion surrounded by all manner of material wealth and possessions, and they could feel desperate, suicidal, unhappy, a real form of poverty, if you will. Because as you think about what wealth really is, it comes in many forms. So I wrote down this quote before the live started today because I had heard it somewhere. I couldn't remember who said it or exactly how it went, so I looked it up, and I want to read this to you now. It's by the Dalai Lama. And what he said was, man sacrifices his health for money, and then he sacrifices his money to restore his health. And I think most people would agree that if you didn't have the wealth of your health and well-being, in other words, if you didn't have your physical life, the money wouldn't really do much for you. If you weren't able to use your body, then you would probably trade all of the wealth that you had to restore your ability to smile, to kiss your loved ones, to think clearly, to walk across a field, to swim through a lagoon. You see where I'm going with this, right? There's all kinds of wealth, and yet I think in our culture, we get bound up in this idea that it all has to do with what we call money. But certainly beyond health, there would be a wealth of relationships. There would be time. And we even talk about spending time. And if you think about this, for most people, you know, the wealthiest man in the world, and I don't know if he's the wealthiest because it always kind of changes, but Jeff Bezos is apparently one of the wealthiest people in the world. And if you're, say, in the middle class and you have reasonable health care and reasonable access to clean water and healthy food, roughly speaking, you would have the same amount of time if you were the same or similar age to Jeff Bezos, the same amount of time remaining in your life as he does, even though he has that much more wealth in terms of money, in terms of physical possessions. So time is a huge aspect. You know, a wealth of joy, a wealth of wisdom, all of these aspects of human existence, I think when we really drill down deep into them, we would see and understand how money actually fits with all of these other measures of wealth. And it's something that I think I certainly have, you know, to my deep chagrin, I certainly have at times lost sight of that on the altar of just wanting to make a lot of money and not even really understanding why I wanted to make a lot of money. So these are all questions that I think are worth raising and thinking about in your own lives. And what I want to do is just jump in here to the comment section and see if there's anything that you know I can deal with right away, because I love this interactive piece. All right, so people are talking to each other, welcoming each other, which is awesome. Somebody here is from Melbourne, Florida, Connecticut, United States. I used to live in Connecticut. Hello. Somebody was having problems with a video. Hope you're not having problems anymore. Janice Winslow is saying, hard to read that, money doesn't make the individual, it just pays your bills. Okay, yeah, that's true. Money definitely pays the bills, and I agree that it doesn't make the individual, but I guess you could argue that money does other things, like money could fund a project. Money could create an endowment that provides education for disadvantaged or gifted children that goes forward into the future by hundreds of years. It could provide money for research that might solve some kind of an important issue. I think there's a lot of things that money can do beyond paying the bills, even though that's kind of like the bottom level of Maslow's pyramid, right? Once you've done that, once you've gotten to that point, now what do you do with it? Because I think in the end, and let's talk about exactly what money is. I feel like this is really important, because how do we have a conversation about money if we don't talk about exactly what it is? So I say that what money is, and this is not my original thought, of course, but money is energy. So if somebody hires you to, cut their grass, you are spending your energy on cutting that grass. And in exchange, they're giving you an instrument in modern, in the world in which we live now. They're giving you an instrument that we call money that is kind of you could think of it as a repository of energy, because they had to spend their energy theoretically at some place and at some time, or someone else had to spend it, maybe they inherited it. And that repository of energy is given to you in exchange for your energy. Now, in an ideal transaction, that's going to be an equal exchange of energy. Is it always that way? No, it isn't always that way, sadly. The way it would be if, for example, I traded 1 hour of my time for 1 hour of your time. And assuming that I valued what you did and what you're good at, and you valued what I did and what I'm good at, and we both gave each other an hour, like a trade or a barter, that might be considered by some people a more even exchange of energy. The cash that you carry in your pocket and the digits that you have in your bank account is not actually money, even though we call it money. And I think it's worth spending a little bit of time just talking about exactly what those pieces of paper in your pocket are and those digits in your bank account, what that actually is. Now, my understanding of what all that is that it's an IOU. It's a debt instrument. So the cash, let's just talk about cash, and I'll say when I'm talking about cash, I'm talking about the digits in your bank account too. The cash, the paper, doesn't have any intrinsic value, and that it represents something called fiat money. In other words, the government just says, we're going to create $100 billion worth of what we're going to call money, the government's going to call money, and the only real value it has is a belief system, is trust and faith that that IOU will be accepted by someone else in exchange for their energy, their goods, and their service. It used to be, prior to 1913, that there were something called silver certificates and gold certificates. So if you go back farther, instead of carrying around chunks of gold and chunks of silver, which is heavy, it's bulky, and you could easily be robbed, people would give it to someone who had guards, and they had a house or a compound that could be more readily protected. And then, and this is what we call a bank, and then instead of actually exchanging these pieces of metal, like for 6 pigs, I'm going to give you a piece of metal, a piece of gold or silver, I would write on a piece of paper, the bearer of this piece of paper can take a piece of my gold or silver in exchange for the pigs that I just received from him. This is my understanding of how cash, paper money came into being. That IOU was essentially kind of like the early silver and gold certificates. That the paper was backed by what I'm going to call real money. Now, this wasn't or isn't my original thought either. J.P. Morgan said that money is gold and nothing else. What did he mean by that? He meant that checks, or writing a check to someone, is essentially an IOU. That handing somebody cash is essentially an IOU. Because what really has value, and has had value throughout human history, is physical gold and physical silver. That's what he meant by that statement. Now, according to some economists that I've read, an ounce of gold will buy you essentially what it would have bought you 100 years ago. Right now, they say the price of gold is going up. But the truth is, the price of gold never goes up and it never goes down. It stays exactly the same. The value of the underlying fiat currency, which is just paper, it's just a belief system, rises and falls in relation to the gold. So as the paper currency has less value, it is said that the price of gold is going up. I hope that kind of makes sense to you. And one of the places where this all ties back in, for me at least, is that the concept of money, our modern concept of money, is built entirely upon a belief system. You're told that it has value. Your neighbor is told that it has value. The stores are told that it has value. And so when you walk in to exchange these things, people accept them. And The other thing that happens is that over time, because of inflation, the value of that money goes down, 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 down. But again, the value of gold doesn't, because, as JP Morgan said, money is gold and nothing else. Now, I put this picture of currency, of this $5 bill up here, just to illustrate that at one point in time, for a very, very, very brief window, like if you take out, a $5 bill out of your pocket, it'll say Federal Reserve Note right at the top where the arrow is pointing. For a very brief period of time in the Kennedy administration, there were bills printed that said United States Note, not Federal Reserve Note, United States Note. So the Federal Reserve System, just very quickly, is a consortium of private banks. We're not allowed to know who they are, and we're not allowed to audit them. And when we want money, they print the money out of thin air. This is part of something called a fractional reserve system, but they don't have to conform to that. They just print the money out of thin air or type it in on a computer system. And then we as taxpayers are mandated by law to pay them 6% interest on that money that they just created out of thin air. They didn't walk into their vaults and pull it out of their vaults and hand it to us. They just created it out of thin air. And President Kennedy in the early 1960s decided, well, this is ridiculous. Why are we paying them 6% to create this money out of thin air? Why don't we just create it ourselves? So we can make the Treasury Department create that money. And that's where these bills came from that say United States Note. So the taxpayers wouldn't have to pay this additional interest. For what? Nothing, really. And then after he was assassinated, all of those bills were pulled out of circulation. All right, I want to move into symbology using this little graphic here. So Confucius said that signs and symbols rule the world, not words nor laws. To a hypnotist, to a person who has invested his life in the power of subconscious influence and persuasion, symbols are absolutely fascinating. A person once asked me, what is a word? What is a word? And honest to God, I was stumped. And the answer was, a word are letters strung together that create sounds that in your mind produce an image. And the image in your mind, however fleeting, like if I said giraffe, or if I said bloody dagger, or if I said cuddly baby, all of these words create images in your mind, however brief. And sometimes just the quick word can produce an emotion. Sometimes if you really think about the word or the words, you can definitely feel the emotions there. Our decision-making is all governed by emotions. How we feel about ourselves, what job we will put ourselves up for, whether we quit the job or not, whether we will start our own business or not, whether we will ask for a promotion or a raise or not. All of this, where I'm getting, is governed by our belief system. Our belief system is enormously powerful, and symbols are one of the things that can control our belief system, because the symbol, like a picture, is closer to the actual experience inside of your mind than even a word is. And yet in modern times, I think we've largely gotten to this place where we sort of overlook symbols, even though they're right in our faces. So for example, on the back of the $1 bill, which I've got here in this photograph, we have an unfinished pyramid. And at the top, we've got an all-seeing eye, which some people say is the all-seeing eye of Horus, which is from Egyptian mythology. What is that doing on the back of a United States $1 bill? I don't remember learning about this in the extensive public school education that I had, that we all have had. I didn't get this in kindergarten, first grade, fifth grade. I didn't get this in junior high school. I didn't get this in high school. I didn't learn about this in college either. What is that doing on the back of a US $1 bill? Well, we're not going to go deep into what it's doing there, but just to point out that it's in your face all the time. And I would relate this back to the science of priming. The science of priming is something that has been studied whereby you expose people to particular words. Let's say you expose the control group to neutral words. Let's say you expose the test group to words that are indicative of being elderly, of aging. Words like cane and bingo and Florida and nurse and gray. And then you measure how fast these two groups of people the same age, college students, walk from test station number 1 to test station number 2. And what it turns out is that the people who were primed with the words suggestive of aging and elderly walk like 30 or 40% slower to the next test station. And the same is true when you prime people with words suggestive of hooliganism versus another group that you prime with words suggestive of being a college professor. And then you give them a standardized test, the same one. And you know the rest. The group that's primed as hooligans performs much more poorly on the standardized test than the group that is primed with words that suggest being a college professor. I'm suggesting that symbols are also priming us. Corporate symbols, government symbols. There's a reason why McDonald's and Burger King and Pizza Hut and Wendy's all have the same colors in their logo. It has been studied how those colors affect you, how they affect your mind, how they affect your physiology, and how it benefits those corporations that own those fast food restaurants. So what I'd like you to consider is that symbols, including an unfinished pyramid on the back of a US $1 bill with an all-seeing eye at the top of it, might be influencing us, right? In the same way that many other symbols that we are subjected to all the time, which we're absorbing with our unconscious mind, even if we're not consciously focusing on it, and in fact, that's where it has more power, may be influencing us in certain ways. All right, let's see if we've got any comments and questions. Corey O'Neill says, and I don't know why is that doing that? That should be brighter. Yep, money is energy. Corporations pay billions for 30 seconds of your time. Yes, be mindful of what you pay attention to. That is your energetic currency. Yes, Corey, you're awesome. I love you. That's fantastic. You absolutely, 100%. There's a man named Jordan Maxwell that has this, and I'm not really sure what to make about this, but it's very interesting how he talks about how words are used. And he talks about how a river has banks along the side of it. And the current of the river flows to the sea, the current sea. And he talks about how ships are birthed, like a human being is birthed. And all of these concepts where these words have dual meanings. So yeah, I 100% agree with you and love that comment. And especially your advice, your exhortation to be mindful of where you are paying your attention, because we only have so much time, right? And during that time, we are spending our attention on different things. Where are you spending that attention? Knowing that what you absorb through your eyes and what you absorb through your ears will dramatically affect your thoughts. And your thoughts affect your emotions, and your emotions affect your decisions, and your decisions affect your outcomes. If you're feeling horrible about yourself, if you're feeling needy and desperate, how are you going to do in that job interview? If you're feeling full of life, full of joy, if you're feeling confident, if you're feeling like the universe has your back, how are you going to do in that job interview? And all the other interactions of your life? And what are the consequences of absorbing negative programming? You know, money doesn't grow on trees. Money is the root of all evil. You have the same chance of getting into heaven. A wealthy man has the same chance of getting into heaven as a camel has through the eye of a needle. You know, all of those ideas and more, now that are delivered to us in a tsunami of information, of data. You know, even the stuff, as I said, that you're not consciously aware of is dramatically affecting you. I watched a really interesting video by a mentalist. And what this mentalist did is he assembled I think it was five, maybe six, probably five social media influencers, people who have kind of broken through all that noise. They've gotten really good at collecting millions of followers and you know, making lots of money and influencing people with their expertise with social media. And this guy was taking this really humble approach. They didn't know who he was. He was pretending, hey, I'm just this middle-aged guy. I don't know much about the internet. I certainly don't know much about social media. And I just want you to teach me, you know, how to be an expert in social media to all of these, you know, 20-somethings. And he had, I think, 5 rooms set up if there were 5 people. And the rooms had different props in them. And what he said is, hey, I'd like you to just go to all of these rooms and arrange these props in a certain way that would really help me understand how to capture and hold other people's attention and how to succeed as, you know, an expert in social media and an influencer the way you guys have done. So they all go to their, you know, they each go to one of the rooms and then they go to the next room and then the next room and the next room and then they reconvene at the end and then they start to hold up pictures of what they did in these rooms. Turns out, all 5 of them did the exact same thing 5 times in a row. And these people are blown away. They're like, how could that have happened? Then they learn that he's a mentalist. And they learned through priming, through his language, priming them. Remember we talked about that with those studies with the elderly and with the hooligans and with the college professors and the dramatic differences and results between those groups? By priming these people through his words, priming them through images in their environment when he was just talking to them that they didn't consciously register, he essentially forced them unconsciously into making the exact same choices. How are we being influenced by a tsunami of information that's coming at us through our ears, through our eyes, through our skin, all the time now? You know, in Elizabethan times, when Shakespeare wrote all of his works, the average Elizabethan would see fewer printed words in their lifetime than one copy of the Sunday New York Times. Think of how things have changed and the ability to influence subconsciously how powerful that has become. And while we're on this topic, I want to just mention that, you know, some of you already know this, many of you or some of you don't, that on my channel, my YouTube channel, Blue Sky Hypnosis, a lot of my videos are subliminal. Meaning that it may start out where you hear me talking, where in some cases I might be inducing you into a hypnotic trance, helping you to relax, helping you go to sleep, helping you shift from a beta state of consciousness to an alpha state of consciousness, which is hypnosis. You can go from alpha then into theta and into delta. And then it transitions where all you hear is, for example, the sound of music, or the sound of rain, or the sound of ocean waves, but tuned underneath that, sub-audible. In other words, consciously you can't hear it, but subconsciously you can. Your subconscious mind drinks in, pulls in all of these underlying messages. And because you're not even consciously aware of it, heck, you're sleeping in many cases. It's enormously powerful the influence it has on your subconscious mind. And I just have to wonder if someone like me, just a guy, a hypnotist out there, can produce subliminal videos and audios. What about people with way more resources? What about flashing an image on a screen that's 1/30th of a second, where your conscious mind can't see it, but your subconscious mind pulls it right in? The technology is fascinating. And I think all of this gets to our deeper belief system, and today we're talking about money. Wow. What do we believe about money? And is that holding us back from what we want? So I'm going to dive in here to the comments and questions and see if we got something here. Hey, it's Legal Eagle 44, one of my regulars. Awesome. Peter, making money makes me feel powerful and my confidence artificially soars. Then I crash when I realize money won't fill me. Hallelujah. Absolutely. So let's go back to Jeff Bezos. This man, you've seen the statistics. It's something crazy. Like, I want to say, and I'll probably get this wrong, but it's like he earns $30,000 every minute or $30,000 every 5 minutes. I mean, he has so much money that he and his grandchildren and his grandchildren's grandchildren couldn't possibly spend it in all of their lifetimes. So why does he keep wanting to, spend all of his time, earning more money? Well, I don't know Jeff Bezos. I'm just using him as an example. And it could be that, like Legal Eagle just said, when he makes more money, he feels more powerful. It's probably delivering some kind of a feeling, because that's really, in the end, what we want. I mean, you can say, I want to have money so I can buy a power boat. Okay, well, why do you want the power boat? Oh, so I can go really fast across the water, or I can explore inlets and coves with my friends. Okay, why do you want to do that? It's always going to come down to a feeling. So I can feel like I'm worthy. I'm a good producer. So I can feel like I have close friends. So I can feel like I'm free. It's always going to come down to a feeling, just like Legal Eagle was saying. She was saying that she felt powerful or feels powerful. And then it fades and she realizes, wait a minute, that actually didn't fill that hole. This is how people, I think, who are compulsive shoppers, that the shopping, when they're shopping or when they buy something and bring it home, they have this really good feeling and then it fades and then they're back to where they were. Or people who are massively overeating. That while they're eating, it feels like they're filling some kind of a hole or a void. But then 5 minutes after they finish eating, that feeling returns because they didn't really solve the deeper issue. Oh, really good point. Really good point. Let's see what else we have here. Julianne Warner says, I absolutely love these Friday Lives. I get so much out of listening to Peter. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'm going to have to give you an applause. Thank you very much. All right, so let's talk about obstacles right now. Obstacles to, let's just make the assumption that you are not making the kind of money you want to be making. Or maybe you're making the money that you want to be making, but you're not making it the way you want to be making it. Let's stick with the first one, that you're making X, but you really want to be making Y. So let's talk about some obstacles that could be creating this situation for you. And I've got a handy dandy little, what do you call it? I don't know, an overlay they call these. And I'm gonna put that up there. So the reason I put this one up about karma is because when I was teaching this class in a live setting, and I suppose I could do this online. In fact, I definitely could. And I'll just have to think through this a little bit more if that would make sense. And maybe you guys can tell me if you like the idea. Is after I went through the sort of, here's the background, here's the philosophy, the things that I'm talking about with you guys right now, answered some questions and whatnot. We did a hypnotic regression. Whole class did a hypnotic regression. And what I had them do is I had them regress to a past lifetime where their attitudes, their current attitudes about money were formed. That's all I said. So we go into this past lifetime, and the cool thing is when you get all these people live there in the room, and I suppose we can do it here, I was able to debrief and ask people, what was that? What happened? What happened in that experience? And I remember one case where a woman said that she went back to a past lifetime where she was fabulously wealthy. You know, she lived in a mansion, she had servants, she had fine clothes, she had, you know, elegant food and surroundings and whatnot. But in that lifetime, it separated her from other people that she loved through things like jealousy and envy and people feeling like they weren't good enough to be in her life, for example, and people arguing over business deals and so forth. And so she essentially decided, as a result of the unhappiness in that lifetime, that she wasn't going to do that again. And so in her subconscious mind, it's almost like there's programming that says, hey, like a thermostat, you know, if it gets over, I'm going to set it to 68 degrees. If it gets over 68 degrees, shut off the thermos, have it come back down to 68 degrees. And no matter what she does, she's not going to get any more than to 69 or 70 degrees. She's not going over that because her thermostat is set at a certain point, and it's set at a certain point for a very powerful emotional reason that she has no conscious recollection before she did the regression of what set that thermostat. Other people, another person I remember who was a nun in a past lifetime. And she took a vow of poverty. That vow, so think of a wedding vow. Traditional wedding vows end with, till death do us part. I think there's spiritual understanding in the creation of that part of the vow that understands that if you don't have an end point to the contract, it goes in perpetuity. So a person who takes a particular vow in a previous lifetime with no end date in that vow, like till death do us part, that vow can still be in force. And so when that person starts getting over their set point on that thermometer, let's use a different, because I know if you start going over 68, 70, you start getting too hot. So let's say you're cold, it's the middle of the winter time, but your thermostat is set at 58 degrees. When her thermostat starts to go 58, 59, it's going to shut off. And what's causing it to shut off is that old vow of poverty. Unless she did the past life regression, she would never know this. She would never know that that is, for her, what is blocking her from achieving her goals. And I suppose you could say, on some level, as I said at the beginning of this live, that your belief system, you know, if you really believe that money is the root of all evil, if you really believe, for example, that wealthy people are jackasses, or if you think that a wealthy person has the same chance of getting into heaven as a camel through the eye of a needle, if you really believe that and these things are important to you, wouldn't that stop you? You know, if your parents said to you, money doesn't grow on trees, if they said making money is hard, it's difficult, what if you internalize that? What if you really love your parents consciously and subconsciously, and if they were your role models? Isn't it possible that you might embody some of that intense, those intense beliefs and the emotions that go along with them? So when you're out making money, it's hard, 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 right? Or if your parents or others really got angry when they were paying bills, they're stealing from me, blah, 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 blah. You know, I once heard that thinking about money is like thinking about the breathing system. It's give, which is associated with the right hand, and it's receive, which is associated with the left hand. So giving would be exhaling, and receiving would be inhaling. And if you disrupt either side of that system, then you mess up the other one. In other words, the advice was, pay your bills with joy. You're going to pay them anyway. Pay them with joy. Let it be easy. Let that money go out easily so that you can receive it easily. Because if you don't exhale properly, if it's difficult for you to exhale, then it will be hard for you to inhale, like asthma. So back to the obstacles and back to the belief system. Another one could be, I won't feel good until I've lost this weight. I want to feel good, and the way I'm going to feel good is by losing X number of pounds. Or it could be, I don't feel good, I want to feel good, the only way I'm going to feel good is when I crack 6 figures on my salary, when I crack 7 figures on my salary, or when I make my first billion. I was talking to a client a week before last who has a very successful business, but has in the mind of this client that the business has to be sold for a massive amount of money so they can walk away with whatever the percentage of that is, 5% of it or 10%, which is a massive amount of money, in order to be free. And I said before, you could be living in the lap of luxury, physical luxury, and feel like a prisoner. You could be living in a trailer park in modest circumstances and feel like the freest person on the planet. And the irony is that, and this gets to the law of correspondence, so there are hermetic principles or hermetic laws. I've talked about them here before. To me, they're really, really, really important. I feel like ancient wisdom is something we should pay attention to. If people are still reading ancient wisdom 5,000 years later, 2,000 years later, it's probably worth paying attention to it. That's my feeling. And so the hermetic laws, hermetic just means hidden or sealed. There are 7 hermetic laws. One of them is the law of correspondence. And that essentially states, as within, so without. If you look at your outside world, you look at your bank account, for example, you look at your physical possessions and you see lack, you see poverty there. What it means is that there is lack and poverty on the inside. What does that mean as far as our conversation goes today? It means deeply embedded beliefs that are running the software of your system, your body and your mind, and producing the same results over and over again. So how would you go about changing this? Well, I'm glad you asked. You would first, and this is just the way I do it, right? So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But this is in general, a 30,000-foot view of how I practice. I say, we have to find that obstacle using hypnotic regression first. We find that obstacle that was created sometime in the past, either earlier in your present life, maybe something that your parents said or did, or things that you watched them do, or maybe they shamed you, or who knows what it was. Or maybe it was a past life where you took a vow of poverty, or you had a bad experience. Maybe you were a thief and money was so important to you, you were stealing money, and maybe you were, tried and executed as a result of that. We would want to heal that it would be called an original sensitizing event, where that belief was created, because that's the root of the weed. So it's like you have, a whiteboard or a blackboard, and on it you have written, call it the word poverty. First step is essentially finding where that's written and erasing it, neutralizing it. Step number 2 is you take your piece of chalk, or you take your whiteboard marker, is that what they call it? And you write on the whiteboard, I am abundant. I am worthy of wealth. I am wealthy. And this is sort of a simplified way of saying we want to flood your subconscious mind with the desired outcome. So on my channel, if you want to try this out, I have tracks designed to help you improve your wealth consciousness. I've got tracks that are audible, I've got tracks that are subliminal. Those are things that you can experiment with. Now, if you decide to experiment with them, what I would suggest is give it a month. Listen religiously every day or every night while you're sleeping for a month. Stick with it, because what's going to happen is there are there are opposite beliefs probably in your mind. The new beliefs are going to come in, and they're not going to find a home there, right? They're going to find opposition. That opposition can sometimes create, not always, but sometimes it can create a little bit of discomfort. It's like two medieval armies clashing. And that's the point that you don't want to run away. That's the point at which you want to do more of it, to overwhelm and overcome the old ideas. And then, ideally, you would have some kind of a maintenance system going forward, so that maybe every day, as part of your practice, you could do 5 minutes or 15 minutes, or maybe every other day you do a half an hour, where you're reinforcing these beliefs until it becomes a reality in your experience, in your outer experience. Remember, law of correspondence, as within, so without. If you don't like what you see on the outside, it's just a mirror reflection of what's going on the inside. All right, let's see if we have any comments or questions here that we can hop into. Corey's asking if, Corey O'Neill is asking if I do these every Friday. And the answer is yes. Yeah, definitely do these every Friday. So please feel free to show up, and love that comment before. Let's see. The plays, oh yeah. So AW is saying, and I don't know why this is so faded here. I don't know if you guys are seeing it as faded too. I'm gonna have to look into that later. Usually is a little bit brighter. The plays, meaning Shakespeare's plays and so forth, other playwrights, were the news of the day in Elizabethan times. Well, they certainly heavily influenced people. And in fact, in earlier times, in Greek times, apparently, music was regulated. Plays were regulated. Even in Elizabethan times, the plays were regulated because they had such a powerful impact upon the minds of the subjects that the king would not want a play to be subversive, to suggest ideas of democracy or, you know, the king is illegitimate or something like that, because it was realized how much effect that a play had on the minds of people. How much do movies you watch have an effect on your mind? Or listening to the news, watching the news, how much does that affect you? And what would happen if you began to disconnect yourself even a bit from that system, and instead begin to consciously feed yourself what you want in there? How would that affect your life? I would suggest it would affect your life in very dramatic and very positive ways. Let's see, Doreen Grannon. Oh my God, till death do us part. I filed 2 times for divorce. I had a tremendous struggle with that belief until I realized it does not have to be the death of the spouse, but the death of but I see death of healthy relationship. All right, so what I'll just say as is it an aside? Well, yeah, it's because it's not exactly on money, but it makes it's relevant in this conversation, I think, is that in working with clients who've had divorces, especially difficult ones, I recognized at some point that when people get married, there's 2 parts, usually. Sometimes there's 1 part, but usually there's 2 parts, which is a legal contract, a spiritual contract, 2 parts. When there's a divorce, 1 part. Dissolution of the legal contract. They're not necessarily dissolving the spiritual contract. And I think before you can move on into another relationship, it kind of makes sense that you would also dissolve the spiritual contract. So let me know in the comments section, guys, if you'd like to see that as a Friday topic, you know, something on relationships, maybe divorce, the spiritual aspects of it. And if people like that, then maybe I can cook up, or you can suggest ways that we could do that, because I think there may be something there. But thanks for your comment, Doreen. Appreciate it. And good to see you here again. You're one of the regulars. Love to have you here. As is AW, as is Legal Eagle 44. So thank you guys, all of you. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay. This is awesome. Legal Eagle 44. Living in India for 3 months at a time, I would see the biggest smiles on the poorest families. Hello, right? I mean, you do hear stories of wealthy people killing themselves. You know, especially, sadly, children of very wealthy people. or having significant and severe drug addiction problems. And yet, I think we're led down this primrose path, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow and the buried treasure and, finding your fortune and what's sort of portrayed in movies. At the end of the movie, I was watching one last night where, the person gets their money in their Swiss bank account and they're sailing off in the ocean in their yacht, and that's the last image you see. You don't see anything after that. They blow it all on gambling, they become morbidly obese, they have a horrible relationship that falls apart, they kill themselves. You don't see any of that. It just looks like happily ever after, because now they got the money, now they got the girl or what have you. All right, great, thank you for that legal. Let's see what else we have here. Christine Calliston recently made a purchase, really didn't have the money, but made the purchase anyway. Sent an intention out that I needed something to come along to help pay for it. 2 days later, a quick job came along. That's so cool. And you hear these stories all the time. I feel like it's happened in my life. And one of the things, what movie was it? Was it The Secret, or was it you don't know bleep about? There was one of these spiritual movies that came out, and they were talking about the myth of Aladdin and the lamp and the genie. And I think I was exposed to this in my training. And they talked about the genie being a metaphor for your powerful, creative, subconscious mind. That's job is to create. And just like Aladdin and the genie doesn't care what Aladdin asks for. Aladdin can ask for something, like a lot of money, or a beautiful girl to be his wife, or could ask for an infirmity, or could ask for a knife, or could ask for anything. And the genie doesn't care. This powerful, overwhelming creative force. So if in your mind, your programming is telling you to stay at 58 degrees, the genie is going to deliver you 58 degrees, even if you're sitting there shivering all through the winter and saying, why is it so damn cold? So yeah, tap into that powerful part of you. There are all kinds of tools now to do it. My channel isn't the only one. The hypnosis isn't the only way. It's a really good way, a really powerful way. It's the way I know. But start tapping into that part of you. In other words, start turning away from the programming that's delivering the same results. Turn towards the programming that will deliver new results to you. So fantastic point, Christine. Appreciate that. Here's a person that I don't recognize your name. So welcome, Ms. Pam. Is it normal to become afraid when listening to past life regression? The fear stopped from listening. All right, so it sounds like you got past the fear, but yes, it is normal to feel fear. Now, here's why it works that way. Consciously, you have no idea you've even lived a past lifetime, let's say. So consciously, you have no idea where your subconscious mind is going to take you when you go into a past life. All right, therefore, you have no reason to really fear it, although you could argue, well, it's new, I haven't done it before, so maybe that's creating some fear. That's possible. More than likely, it's because your subconscious mind knows exactly what happened in the past life. It knows exactly where you might be going if that door gets open and you walk back there. Could be a significant trauma that happened. And so what happens is people can start to feel it as fear inside of their body and their emotions. Sometimes they feel pain in their body somewhere. And that is an echo of that past lifetime. It may even be part of your subconscious mind trying to keep it suppressed by producing all of this fear and a shortness of breath and agitation and pain in the body so that you'll back out and not go there, because its job is to protect you. But I say, if you got a splinter in you, leaving the splinter in your body and just drinking whiskey or taking drugs to dull the pain doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes more sense to me to locate the splinter, sterilize a needle, get a pair of tweezers, dig it out. It's gonna hurt it's gonna hurt when you dig it out, of course. But when you get it out, it's gonna feel a lot better, and that underlying wound is now gonna be able to heal, and then you'll forget you even had that problem in the first place. This is how I think when I help people find the origin of what is creating the discomfort they're dealing with today, wherever that is. Weight loss, confidence, relationships, money issues, business issues, public speaking, physical issues that may be going on. Find the root, resolve that root, and then deliver the programming you want for the desired outcome. And then have some kind of maintenance program going forward. So you don't just say, hey, I went to the gym and I got my body the way I want it. I'm done with the gym. I don't have to go there anymore. Because you're going to slide back to a degree. So having said all of this, it doesn't mean that some people don't experience powerful results just by going to call it step 2. I have them going simultaneously, but going to the flood the mind with the desired outcome. For a lot of people, that really does begin to produce the results that they want. And the more diligent you are with doing that step, the more likely you are to experience those results you want. That is traditional hypnosis right there. You know, hypnotherapy is often thought of as that 2-step thing, which is we clear out the obstacles. Then we move into the flooding your mind with the desired outcome, because now you don't have anything in the way. It is said when hypnotists get trained, we're taught that the most powerful emotion always wins. You may want to lose that 10 pounds. Great, I understand why. But if your subconscious mind says it's dangerous to lose that 10 pounds because the last time that happened, you know, the person was attacked, then the most powerful emotion will win, which is self-preservation. Doesn't matter how bad you want to lose the 10 pounds or the 100 pounds, ain't gonna happen, especially not gonna happen permanently, because the subconscious mind is gonna say that's not safe. We gotta add that weight back on. So, all right. Let's just see if, oh, I wanted to talk. All right, good. I'm glad I made these notes here. I wanted to talk about the book, Think and Grow Rich. That's what the cover of the book looks like. Covering my face, I go that way. All right, so Think and Grow Rich was written in the 1930s by Napoleon Hill. It was commissioned by Andrew Carnegie, the wealthy industrialist who came to the United States from Scotland at the age of 17 with almost no money. And he transformed his life into one of fabulous riches. He was one of the wealthiest industrialists of his time. And he reasoned, Carnegie did, that if one were to interview all the wealthiest, because they were all men, all the wealthiest men of that time, there would probably be patterns that all of these men pursued in what resulted in this fabulous success and all the wealth that came along with it. And so, so he engages this kid at the time, I think Napoleon Hill was in his 20s, and says, I will get you the audiences, not an interview, an audience, meaning he might spend half a day, a whole day, or 2 days with each one of these wealthy industrialists. I'll get you those meetings, and I want you to write this book, and I'm not going to pay you. Do you want this job, yes or no? You have to tell me in the next 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. And Napoleon Hill says yes. So Andrew Carnegie gets him all of these interviews, these audiences with these wealthy industrialists, and he's interviewing them and asking them all these questions. And the book is essentially, Think and Grow Rich, is an amalgamation, a distillation of their thinking. What they did, essentially collectively, the things that they all more or less agreed on, what they did in order to get to that degree of success. And what blows me away about this book, which is the most successful business book of all time, is when you just read the chapter headings, it does not sound like a business book at all. So these are not all the chapters in the book. These are just the ones that I pulled out that are the ones that make it clear that we're dealing with psychology, emotions, esotericism, and so forth. So the first chapter is thoughts are things. Yeah, thoughts are things. Because when you go see a movie and you're watching, I don't know, a car chase or a monster jumping out of a closet with a knife, and you kind of go back in your chair and you grip the armrests and your heart starts beating more rapidly and your body dumps adrenaline and cortisol into your bloodstream, you are having real, demonstrably real physiological responses, things, to a thought. You see an image, creates a thought in your mind. That thought that it creates in your mind is literally, I'm in danger. And the body responds as though you're in danger. Now, your conscious mind knows you're not in danger. It's your subconscious mind, whose job is to protect you, that moves you into a stress response and creates all of those physiological responses. To what? Images on a screen, thoughts. If you want to create this pen, if you want to create this travel mug, if you want to turn right on Maple Street before you get there, it has to be a thought in your mind first. Everything is created twice. Meaning your reality is a product of your thoughts. And this gets all the way back to the belief system around money. How money and wealth is portrayed in popular culture, in magazines, on the radio, in books, on television, on the big screen, what your mom and dad said about it, what your teachers in school say about it, what do your friends say about it, the symbols that you come across, right? Thoughts are things. Another chapter in Think and Grow Rich, the subconscious mind. Hello, what have we been talking about this whole live, right? We've been talking about it's your subconscious mind. That's the software programming that is running your life. And I don't know exactly how many people Napoleon Hill / Andrew Carnegie interviewed. It's listed in the book, and it looks to me like it's 60, really big names. All the biggest names of the time. Maybe 60, maybe 50, maybe 70. It's somewhere around there. I could be off, but it's a fair number of people. And those people, this is a distillation of how they became successful. They are talking about the subconscious mind. That's not in your average business book, by the way. Autosuggestion. What is autosuggestion? That's a whole chapter in Think and Grow Rich. Autosuggestion literally means self-hypnosis. Autosuggestion is self-hypnosis. How to hypnotize yourself to change your subconscious mind and your belief system, your software, so you get a different outcome. Now we have really amazing tools that we did not have in the 1930s. Imagination. Einstein said, imagination is more powerful than knowledge. What you imagine to be true becomes true. Watching that thing up on the screen, or if you close your eyes and you imagine, some encounter you had in the past, either, passionate or frightening, and you really imagine it, your body will start to behave as though that's really happening right now. Your imagination, I say, and I've got a video on it on my channel, your imagination is real. That's what my video says. You may want to watch that and just see if you agree with that. The mystery of sex transmutation. The mystery of sex transmutation is an occult practice. It's called sex magic, using the inherent creative power of sexuality to create other things, right? So a man and a woman come together and they can create human life. So sex magic concerns itself, if you want to read further about it, with creating other things. Now this can be dark or it can be light. It's like electricity. Electricity can be used to save someone's life or take someone's life. The power itself is agnostic. The sixth sense. So we have 5 physical senses, right? Hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching. The sixth sense could be thought of as your power of imagination, right? That creative power that I think is one of the things that makes us human. And remember, everything has to be created in your mind before it can be brought into a physical reality. Before you can turn right on Maple Street, you have to imagine turning right on Maple Street. Then your hands turn, then the wheel turns, then your 3,000-pound vehicle turns. And then desire, right? So again, kind of like the mystery of sex transmutation, the desire. Why do you want to lose 40 pounds? What's the desire? What's the desired outcome? You know, why do you want to make 6 figures? Why do you want to make 7 figures? These are important questions to ask, and to get your desire aligned with what neuro-linguistic programming calls a well-formed outcome. You know, if you want to lose 175 pounds and you want to do it in 24 hours, that is not a well-formed outcome. You know, surgery aside, I don't even think you could take that much off with surgery, but that is not a well-formed outcome. A well-formed outcome means that the path from A to Z all makes sense. The timelines, it being aligned with your deeper desire, with your deeper purpose, with your talents, with your skills, with your abilities, with your passions, all of these things lining up. And in spiritual terms, ancient terms, I think they called this the golden path. When you're doing what you believe you were meant to do, and you can feel it in your body. You know, your sixth sense knows you're doing the right thing for you. This is where you want to be. This is where you need to be. This is your calling. And because it's your calling, you do more work. You know, it doesn't even feel like work to you. You know, you throw a couple hours in on a Sunday night, or you wake up in the morning and think, oh, I wanted to get to that thing. And I've got a friend who he's launching a kind of a new career for himself as a photographer. And a conversation that we had a couple of days ago, you know, he's like, why didn't I come to this earlier? You know, I get up at 4 in the morning and I go out into the wilderness to shoot, you know, and I'm getting paid nothing. And I think I'm going to launch some other kind of business. Why wouldn't I launch the one that I would do even if I'm not paid? So I think that there's enormous power, and it's worth considering these kinds of things. And a lot of this is captured in what these very wealthy people, all the distillation of what they were talking about. And again, those are not all the chapters in the book. Those are just the ones that I popped out that I wanted to talk about, because they have a spiritual basis. They have a psychological basis. They have an emotional basis. I mean, autosuggestion means self-hypnosis, for crying out loud, right? So, all right. I want to just go in and let's see where we are in time. Okay, so we're about to wrap it up for today. I'll take maybe two more comments or questions. And before we do that, I just wanted to suggest that if you're not already subscribed to my channel, Blue Sky Hypnosis on YouTube, that you do that. That means that when I produce content, whether it's these lives or whether it's my, you know, sort of regular content, most of which is, call it like a virtual self-hypnosis actual session for different topics, it'll be more likely to come through your feed. If you click the bell notification icon, every time I produce content, you will be alerted through YouTube. And also just subscribing or liking and all that stuff, that just raises in the algorithm and more people are made aware of this content. Secondly, I wanted to say that next Friday, I'm going to be doing I gotta move that way. Oh yeah, okay. I'm talking about resolving grief. And this involves meeting deceased loved ones in what I would call spiritual hypnosis. So one of the most difficult but most rewarding aspects of this work is when I work with a client who has lost a loved one. And you know, it's almost all of us. If we live long enough, it's almost all of us. And in some cases it's tragic, and in some cases it's really painful, like parents who lose their children. And what I have found is that when you go inside and you meet in your consciousness, in a hypnotic state, in your consciousness, when you meet with a deceased loved one, that the first meeting is is filled with sadness. The tears are usually just flowing like a river. And then the second time you meet, the third time you meet, the fourth time you meet, that flow starts to turn into a trickle. And then it turns into, hey, there you are. I'm so glad to see you again. I'm so glad to put my arms around you. And I feel like we are so closed off in this five-sense reality and in our bodies that, and especially in this culture, that we feel like death is the end of everything. It's oblivion. When really, I think it's just the death of the physical body, that the soul or the spirit doesn't die. And so in this class, we're going to talk about that phenomenon of being able to, in your consciousness, meet with the consciousness of a deceased loved one, and by so doing, heal your grief. So I hope you'll consider joining me and the rest of us for that one. And let's just hop in here and see if there's a couple more comments or questions we can jump into. Debbie Tucker, please do one about releasing spiritual contracts. I've had 3. Okay, yeah. I think that might work. I gotta just figure out if you know, all the things that we can talk about to make it interesting enough for an hour. But spiritual contracts, that might work. That might work. Thank you for making that suggestion, and I'll put it on my list of possible topics that we can do. So thanks for suggesting that. Really appreciate it. MH is saying, yes, would love to see a session on marriage contracts. Okay, I'm getting a divorce at the moment, so yeah. Okay, yeah, all right. That really helps, MH, along with you, Debbie, that what I might talk about is a little bit about why we come together, and then also talk about the underlying contract. Because the other possible contract that can exist, so when you get married, I said there's a legal contract and there's a spiritual contract. Well, there can be a contract that occurs in the life between lives, before you're born, with people in your life. And so we can definitely, I'm going to say definitely, we can do spiritual contracts. And I'm just making a note to myself. All right. AW, always a pleasure, Peter. Thank you, AW. Learning about the law of attraction. Cool. Thank you, Alyssa Haynes. And let's see. Kay Robinson is saying that would be a good topic. Oh, here's one. Teresa Lowry is saying, what blocks the energy vibrations? Great question. Let me answer that in a slightly different way, and let's see if that works for you. Let's make that smaller. Let's say that anything in your life, any kind of food, any kind of music, any kind of TV show, anything that produces a thought, probably smells, is going to create either a higher or a lower vibration. We want to achieve and maintain, to the extent that we can, the highest vibration possible. We want to be vibrating with love, with abundance, with wealth, with physical health, with joy, with friendship, with love, with compassion, all of those things. Now, you said what would block that? So hatred, anger, resentment, fear, all of those things are gonna jam you back down. So I always talk about, or often talk about, the 11 o'clock news, and how for decades their mantra has been, if it bleeds, it leads. You can always find somebody in a big city, you know, some heinous crime that has been committed. And why do they focus on that? Well, it gets eyeballs locked in because we're all designed to you know, protect ourselves from harm. And we tend to fixate on that sort of thing. But if you fixate too long on things like, you know, murder and mayhem, your vibration starts to go down. Certain kinds of symbols, we all know what they are gonna just, by the symbol itself, you know, a famous political party that ran a country in Europe in the 1940s during World War II. A very famous symbol that you just stare at that symbol, that's going to bring your vibration down. Or it's going to block, if you want to use that term, maybe it would block the higher ones. You know, it causes me to think about this Native American story, where a grandfather was teaching his son about how the world, how the universe works. And the grandfather said to his son, it's a war or a battle between a wolf, a dark wolf, a wolf of the darkness, and a light wolf, a wolf of the light. And the grandson says, well, which wolf wins? And the grandfather says, the one you feed. So my long-winded answer to your question is the one you feed. What are you feeding yourself? Are you feeding yourself literally Twinkies? Or are you feeding yourself, say, organic fruit? Are you feeding yourself the view of the mountains, or of the forest, or of the ocean, or of a cat sleeping? Or are you feeding yourself images of war and destruction, of people talking about how bad things are? So that's my hopefully I gave you an adequate answer to your question. But I think what we want to do is we want to be like, if you think about scales, let's see, are you able to see that here? Scales, yeah, up and down, like the scales of justice. You want the scales of love and life to be weighted on the side of things that produce a higher energetic vibration. So everyone, thank you very much for joining me for this Friday Live. As always, sincerely appreciate your attendance. You know, a special shout out to the regulars and to the people who may become regulars. You know, people are supporting each other. They're establishing a community here to a degree, which I think is absolutely awesome and cool. I hope you'll consider joining for next week, which is resolving grief, meeting deceased loved ones using spiritual hypnosis, where we'll take a deeper dive into that. And please keep the comments coming and the suggestions for other Friday Lives at 5. Have a great weekend, you guys, and we'll see you next Friday, live at 5, Friday Eastern. Take care. Bye.